Hello, America. Hello, world. This is Jake Baker. This is the Baker Report. Here we are, already well into 2024, and the world is continuing its course that was set back in 2023. And the destination seems to be chaos. Scripture tells us that chaos is a sign of judgment. The Lord says he'll bring chaos as a judgment when a nation becomes ungodly and turns their back on Yahweh and his righteousness. And we'll spend more time on that in just a few minutes. But chaos is not just here in the United States. There is chaos around the entire globe. Much of that chaos is being sparked by this administration, the Biden folks. Remember, the Biden people, who are in reality serving in the third term of Barack Hussein Obama, did not come here to govern. They came here to destroy. Barack Obama is a Christian-hating, American-hating bigot who hates white people and all non-Muslims. That's why we're seeing the attacks on Christian parents, Catholics, and anyone who falls into the general category of patriot, or that really dreaded word, Trumper, or the phrase America Firster. The war of persecution and prosecution is aimed at Christians and patriots. This cadre of treasonous conspirators are going to do everything in their power to make America first and Christian morality both a hate crime and a social stigma that will cost you your job, your, quote, social credit score, end quote, cause discrimination against you with lenders, employers, social media, and community leaders. They'll not be satisfied until those who oppose sodomy and transvestism and the sexual mutilation of children and the chemical castration of young boys are subject to persecution, including denial of parental rights. In fact, several states have already passed laws that either established or laws that will lead to the establishment of principles that will remove children from parents who don't support sexual transitioning or sexual mutilation of children, including misgendering nonsense. But that also includes the breast removal of young girls, and again, the chemical castration of young boys. Meanwhile, the CEO of the world's largest bank, which is Jamie Dimon, hints at historic crashes that might yet occur in the very near future. Listen to what he had to say. This is the world's most powerful CEO, or at least one of the world's most powerful CEOs. And he just issued this grave warning to Americans. He says, this may be the most dangerous time the world has seen in decades. His comments sent a wave of anxiety rippling through the investment world. Why? Because as the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, the world's largest bank, Jamie Dimon, has access to more financial information than probably 99% of the rest of the world. He didn't rise to power as a hothead or doom and gloomer. Listen, Jamie Dimon, if nothing else, is a calm, cool, calculating customer and knows the gravity of his words. So if he believes that political instability is reaching a boiling point, one that could even hurt the world's largest bank, smart investors understand what he is saying and are beginning to take evasive action. Dimon later got more specific when he said, the danger is government debt and inflation. Let me repeat that. The danger is government debt and inflation. Well, he's partially right. There is a moral, spiritual crisis that is the underpinning of the government debt and inflation, but more on that in a while. He's right. Our $34 trillion federal debt is a ticking time bomb. By the way, a debt that can never be repaid, will never be repaid. Now, add to this the fact that there are more than 180 U.S. banks on the red list, which means that they're teetering on the verge or the edge of insolvency, even as inflation continues to rise and interest rates remain high. And that means that the banks in this country's main assets, which are government bonds, which they were forced to take by the government, those government bonds continue to decline in value, while government debt seems to be skyrocketing without any limits. And the Republicans aren't stopping it. One can begin to see a world where the worldwide banking and economic systems could very quickly find a catastrophic undoing. Now, while all of this is going on, it has to be noted that the war in Ukraine is all but lost, and the Obama-Biden cabal has managed to flush another $150 billion of your hard-earned dollars down the crapper. We know from the start that the war was unwinnable. But it was the Obama-Biden administration that told Ukraine not to negotiate, back away from the negotiation table. Why? Why would they do that knowing that this was an unwinnable war? Because, folks, it was all about money and kickbacks. So we've sent them $150 billion in money and material. One has to ask, knowing it was a lost cause, why we would do it. Simple, because rhinos and Democrats are making money off the deal. The military-industrial complex is only too happy to stuff cash into their campaign funds, stock portfolios, and the holdings of those people like Nancy Pelosi who profit from the kickbacks as well as the insider trading she and the rich and powerful create for their own benefit. By the way, some reports say that she beat the stock market by as much as 600%. Is that the same reason the Obama-Biden cabal will not close the border? You bet. First, these illegals are costing U.S. taxpayers and our economy between $750 billion and $1 trillion annually. They want to destroy America. This is a good start. Additionally, they're diluting our culture, bringing in illegals who will, as we all know, find their way to the polls and end up voting for their Democrat benefactors. Additionally, they're clogging up our schools, emergency rooms, courts, and prisons. The average illegal, by the way, commits 5 felonies just to get established here in this country. And we have confirmed reports that illegals are given as much as $5,000 when they get here and $2,200 per month in benefits. Meanwhile, people on Social Security who have paid in all their lives are getting by on $1,300, $1,400 a month. Not to mention, by the way, these illegals are all getting free medical, free housing, free education, and most work, by the way, tax-free for cash. Meanwhile, global corporations are receiving about $1 trillion in subsidy by being able to hire slave labor from the pool of illegals coming into this country who are working as cash and carry employees. But all of that, folks, falls on the working class in America. That's you and me. This is roughly a bill for every working American in this country of about $7,000. For a husband and wife working as a family, that amounts to $14,000 a year. And of course, the borders have to stay open. So the government-approved drug cartels can continue to bring in all of their drugs from which they're profiting and continue their human trafficking freely across U.S. borders. But, folks, this isn't without consequence. There are many consequences to human trafficking, to human trade, slavery trade, sex trade. But the drug trade is even more devastating in many cases because this year, more than 100,000 Americans will die from fentanyl poisoning. That fentanyl is crossing those open borders over the next 12 months. Think of that. 100,000 dead Americans. What if Canada attacked us and killed 100,000, or Mexico attacked us directly and killed 100,000? What would we do? But all of this can be laid at the feet of Joe Biden and the Mexican government. Biden is a traitor, and the narco state of Mexico has committed an active war against the U.S., and yet we do nothing. Listen, folks, they could stop these cartels tomorrow if they wanted to. America could stop the cartels tomorrow if we wanted to. But like American politicians, the Mexican politicians are all getting kickbacks from the cartels and have no interest in shutting any of this down and closing the spigots that are controlled by these monsters. Meanwhile, The border area from El Paso down to Terralingua and all the way to Brownsville is becoming uninhabitable. And here is the coup de grace. Thousands and thousands and thousands of Islamists are coming across that southern border. They've already set into motion plans to carry out a terrorist attack across the entire country. There are now 10 million Islamists in this country. The vast majority of those are American and Christian-hating Mohammedans just waiting for their jihad to launch in the U.S. Remember, the war in Israel is expanding by the day, but it was started by a few thousand jihadists streaming into Israel. And in a day, 14 Israelis lay dead. Babies had their heads cut off and burned. Life in Israel will never be the same. Israel now has 200,000 internal refugees within their own borders. The border regions with Lebanon are uninhabitable. The border regions with Gaza are uninhabitable, as is the border region with Syria. 200,000 people have been displaced. Israel cannot and will not allow that to stand. There will be war with Syria. The Middle Eastern war is going to expand into Syria. There will be war with Lebanon. There will be war with Jordan. There will be war with Egypt before it is done. Iran will continue to foment war and upheaval. It is the prince of Persia from Daniel chapter 7 that we see operating right now in modern day Iran. That same powerful spirit. This war will widen, and before it's done, it will lead us to the brink of a world war. But it is Islam, militant, terrorists, and brutality of violent Islam that is at the heart of this coming Psalm 83 war, and will be a part and parcel of the next Ezekiel 38 and 39 war, which will be the last great world war before the millennial reign of the Messiah. And by the way, the Psalm 83 war and the Ezekiel 38 and 39 war are not separated by a long period of time. Now, we started to examine this last week. Islam is a religion that is based in mythology, finds its substance in lies and deception, and exists only in darkness and in absolute abject ignorance. And it is only spread or evangelized through violence at the edge of a sword or the barrel of a gun. That's why we're so happy to bring you part 2 of our 4-part series on bringing light to the darkness of Islam with Dr. J. Smith. As I told you last week on part 1 of the Baker Report, Islam is moving across the world like a cancer, sweeping through the body politic. It is an all-consuming fire that thrives on hate and force. Islam is always spread through coercion and force. But here's the good news. Islam is an empty shell. It is a fairy tale religion that has no substance and is a poor forgery of Christianity, shaped cleverly by that old dragon himself who sent it forth to kill and destroy. But Islam cannot stand in the light of the gospel and is exposed by their own writings, by their history, and by their clumsy attempts to create their own prophets and to mimic the true prophets of God. So over the next 4 weeks, this is week 2, we'll be sharing our discussion with Dr. J. Smith, who cut his teeth on debating the scholars and theologians of that dark religion of Islam. When this is done, you will not only understand Islam, you will see that despite its haunting, even frightening specter, it is an empty house with nothing but lies and deception. Our guest today has his doctorate in polemics, and his area of study is Islam and the dismantling of the illusion of a great global religion. He's a gifted scholar, teacher, college professor, and most importantly, a tireless warrior in this epic battle of light and darkness. From this day on, you are going to understand Islam and know how to defeat it as you never have before. This is the time of great spiritual awakening. And I can thank our guest, Dr. J. Smith, for all that he brings to this fight. And in fact, I simply cannot thank him enough for the courage and vision that he has shown. So we're going to take a short time out. When we come back, we'll be back with all of that and a whole lot more right after this. Several months ago, my wife of about 40 years, Katie, became desperately ill. She was bedfast, could barely speak, and even breathing was exhausting. We saw specialists after specialists who had no idea what was wrong, and the best they could do was give her drugs from Big Pharma, probably made in China, so she could die more comfortably. But I didn't want surrender. I wanted to bring shock and awe to whatever this was, and by the grace of God, I was led to Dr. Houck, affectionately known as Pappy. He put her on an all-natural formula that he developed over 30 years that declared war on disease, toxins, viruses, bacteria, heavy metals, and parasites, which I'm told are the root of about 90% of all illnesses, including liver, kidney, lung, and heart problems, as well as dementia. Well, within a couple of weeks, she was up and about, and within about a month, she was back to normal and asking me to take out the garbage. That's when I knew I had to bring this formula to everyone who wanted preemptive wellness and to those who were desperate to find their road back to wellness again. So I created Sanus One for the Wellness and BioCleanse formula. Obviously, no medicine can heal you, but our Wellness and BioCleanse formula attacks all those things that are crippling your immune system. It's designed to clear them out, and that allows your immune system to do what it was designed to do: heal your body. I am 100% convinced that this works. It gave me my Katie back. I'm looking forward to discovering whatever is in the path ahead of us with Katie by my side for years to come. So, today, right now, you need to protect your wellness or find the road back to wellness with our one-of-a-kind Sanus One Wellness and BioCleanse formula. You cannot get this unique bio-sized formula anywhere else in the world. Visit our website at sanusone.com. That's sanusone.com.
I don't know about you, but I'm constantly searching the internet, YouTube, and Rumble for something to watch that will give me news and events. But I really want more than that. I want to know what it all means. I want to know what's going on behind the scenes, and I'm looking for something that'll tell me how all of this relates to the times and the unfolding of Bible prophecy. I can find news, I can find preaching, but finding someone who can put it all together has been frustrating. But a few weeks ago, I stumbled across the Baker Report with Dr. Jake Baker. He has Glenn Beck passion, the insight of a Rusher Tucker, and a prophetic understanding like a Jonathan Kahn. Such a refreshing find. His program comes out every Friday afternoon, but the archives are available anytime at rumble.com. Then search for his channel, The Baker Report. That channel again is The Baker Report. It is amazing.
So, you need a simple video to tell people about your business, educational institution, or nonprofit you run. But, you talked to one of those production houses, and they said it was going to cost way more than you ever imagined. Well, like many of you, we're independent business people and we understand what it takes to run a business or raise funds for a charitable organization, and we're here to help. Whether it's an effective email campaign, a video, short or long, or just a commercial for radio or television, we can help. Need a ghostwriter or help with a webinar? Yep, we can help with that too. Need copy for a website? Article for publication or adfomercial? We've got you covered. If you need it, we can help, and we'll keep your budget in mind as well. So visit our website at elitepowerpros.com. That's elitepowerpros.com, and relax, help is on the way.
There was no Islam back then. Heraclius was a Byzantine, but then he went off to the west and did not worry about what was happening there in that part of the world, and as a reason, because he had bigger problems on his western borders. And so what was left behind was a vacuum of all these small city states, these Arabic speaking city states. And of course, then you had the Umayyads then take over and bring together into one caliphate, the Islam, not Islam, but the Arab caliphate. That's why you don't see the word Islam in any of their writings, nor people called Muslims. So what did they call themselves? Well, they call themselves Ishmaelites because they're in the line of Ishmael up to Abraham, like the Jews and the Christians, but they were cousins to the Jews and the Christians. They were Arabs who were in the line of Ishmael, so they call themselves Ishmaelites. They call themselves Hagarines because of Hagar, the mother of Ishmael. They call them Muhajirun, people of the Hijr, people of Hagar. Again, people, Hun means plural. So they were the people of Hagar. They call themselves Magre. Magre means people of Hagar again. And then the name that they were given by many of the Greek speakers at that time and Syriac speakers was Saracen. So those are the 5 words they refer to, either themselves or others refer to them. There's no reference to Muslim there. You notice, none of those 5 are Muslim. So you can see that Islam, when it began, was really an internecine Christian debate about the divinity of Jesus. But then it became a political power. When the Umayyads took over power and finally amalgamated all the Arabs together, their headquarters is in Damascus. Why aren't people asking, what's it doing in Damascus? Why was it not done in Mecca or Medina? Right? See, no one's asked that question. It's 1,200 miles further north. There's a reason why it wasn't in Mecca, Medina. Take a look at a map and you'll see why. There's no water down there. If there's no water, no food, no people, no towns, no cities, no civilization, no history. That's why they didn't have it down there. It's just a desert. You would not start and have a large metropolis and also an empire based on a desert place that has no water. So Damascus makes sense. And that's exactly what the historical record shows us. He lived in Damascus. It's one of the oldest cities in history. And the reason why is because it's right in the center of all the trade routes. It controls the trade routes. You would want to be where the trades are. The problem is your biggest threat are the Byzantines. Now, what are you going to do? Well, you've got a political problem with them, and they're Christians. They are Trinitarian Christians. You're not. You're anti-Trinitarian. You're still a Christian. So what do? That's why by the time Abd al-Malik, who is the greatest and strongest of all of these Umayyad caliphs, he is the one that builds the Dome of the Rock as a political and a theological polemic. It's a polemic against the Byzantines. That's why it's in Jerusalem. Looking down, it's right there on Mount Moriah. Looking down on the Church of the Sepulchre. So it's a polemic against the Jews. It's a polemic against the Christians because the Christians were coming to Jerusalem in pilgrimage there to a Church of the Sepulchre. This is a bigger structure, the biggest structure of its day. It's a one-upmanship on looking down on the Christians and Jews, and it's saying that your God, your triune is nothing more than the messenger of God. He is not God. Okay, so you can see. So this is a theological polemic, and it's a political polemic because it sits and it's placed right there at the center of both Judaism and Christianity. But here's the problem. Okay, so you now are the superpower of your day, right? You've made your statement by building the Dome of the Rock in 691. The largest structure, the biggest structure, right where the Messiah is going to return on Mount Moriah. You put it right there on Mount Moriah because you control Jerusalem now. In fact, you control from Tripoli all the way to India and from Turkey all the way down to Yemen. Your land you have the biggest power of the day except for the Byzantines. But here's a problem. The Byzantines and the Jews, they have a prophetic line, right? You don't. They're from Isaac. You're from Ishmael. Who comes after Ishmael? Do you know, Jake?
No.
Bingo. You've got a problem. They have a prophetic line. You don't. What's more, they have revelation. You don't. You need what they have. Because your biggest competition are the Christians and Jews, your cousins, through Abraham. You don't care about the Sassanids because they're Zoroastrian. They have nothing to do with your background. And besides, they're weak and they're not a threat to you. But your biggest threat are these Byzantine Christians and the Jews. So what do? You've got to create a prophet. That's why Abd al-Malik now takes that and he realizes that he's got to have a revelation. Isn't it interesting that what we're now finding, there's a great book, let me just show it to you, that you need to get. Oh, where did I put it? Hold on a minute, I'll be right with you. You need to get this book. It's called Creating the Quran by Stephen Shoemaker. It just came out a year and a half ago. Brand new, off the press. In fact, I have done 60 episodes with Al-Fadi 60 separate episodes just on this book, unpacking this book. This is by far the best book that unpacks everything. And Dr. Stephen Shoemaker out of the University of Oregon is the one who wrote the book. And what he did is he took all the best scholarship that he could find, and he put it into one book, quote after quote after quote after quote, to support everything he's saying. So it's not his research, it's all the other experts in their fields, in their areas of expertise, quoting them and just saying, now let's put it together and let's follow what we're finding. And this is what he's finding. He's saying you can't find any manuscript of any Quran that's from the mid-7th century, 652. There is no reference to anybody called Abu Bakr or Umar or Uthman or Ali. Those names don't even exist. If they are the caliphs of Islam from 632 up, and when Muhammad died, supposedly up till 661, when Muawiyah takes over in Damascus, where are their names? Where are their coins? There's no coins. But see, coins are important because you whenever you become a caliph or a leader, you mint coins to announce yourself, because you don't have television or radio, you don't have newspapers or anything like that. You've got to have something to announce you, and everybody's going to have coins in their hands. So you put your face on the coin, you put your name on the coin, you then put what your denomination is, what religious symbol to define who you belong to, and then you write the name of the mint and the year. And all the coins have that. But here's what's interesting. There's no coins with Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, or Ali's names on it at all. They're Arabic coins. And the mints are all up in the north. None in Mecca and Medina. Yet those 4 caliphs are living in Medina, according to Islamic tradition. But the Islamic tradition are all written in the 9th and 10th century, 200 to 300 years too late.
I was going to say 300 years afterwards, right?
They're all written too late, so therefore let's just throw them away. We're not even trusting them anymore. So we've got to go back. And what he's saying, when you find the first Quranic material is starting to be introduced about 705, which is when the manuscripts are dated. I've got 3 of them right here. 3 of them in the oldest 6 manuscripts. They're all dated from 705 up until the 9th and 10th century. So from the 8th, 9th, and 10th century. None of them from the 7th century. Obviously, that means that they were being created by this man named Abdul Malik and his son Walid, al-Walid. So you then start to get the book, but you don't know what book is. You don't have a book, so therefore you've got to borrow from other sources, right? If you don't have a book already, if you don't have something already written up, you need to borrow right, left, and center. So when you open up the Quran, you notice it's all over the place. There's no chronology. There's no theme. There is only one complete story in the entire Quran, and that's chapter 12. So you can see it looks like a book that's been borrowed from many different sources. It has contradiction after contradiction. One place you have Abraham going into the Kaaba. What was Abraham doing way down in Mecca? I don't know. And he destroys all the idols. And later on, it has him just leaving Mecca without destroying anything. You have the creation of the earth in chapter 7 in 6 days, and then in chapter 41 it's in 8 days. So you can see contradiction after contradiction. There's about 250 of these contradictions because it is borrowed from many different sources. What's interesting also, many of the sources that they borrowed from were the wrong sources. They were apocryphal writings, like the story of Cain and Abel in chapter 5. We know who wrote it. A guy named Jonathan ben Uzziah wrote it in the 2nd century about Cain killing his brother Abel and wanting to know what to do with the body, watching a raven, burying its partner. He follows the example. That's not in your Bible, but here it is from this apocryphal account. It's in chapter 5, verse 31 and 32. In the verse 32, which is a very famous verse, everybody uses it. O children of Israel, he who takes the blood of one is if he takes the blood of all. He who saves the blood of one is if he saves the blood of all. Ooh, look at that. We finally got a peaceful verse in the Quran. No, that is not from the Quran. That comes from the Bar Sanhedrin, written by a Jewish scribe who was reading the story of Cain and Abel, writes in the margin in his own penmanship about the blood of Abel. If you take the blood of one of us Jews, you've taken the blood of all of us Jews. If you save the blood of one of us Jews, you save the blood of all of us Jews. If you have any doubt that that's exactly what the Jews believe, look what's happening right now in Gaza. You take the blood of 1,400 of us, we're going to go to battle with you, we're going to take the blood of all of you. It's very much that verse being played out as we speak on the news every day. So this is a very much of a Jewish apocryphal writing. You get the story of Abraham that I mentioned earlier in chapter 21, verse 51 to 71. The story of this Abraham going into the Masjid al-Haram, which is this forbidden place of bowing. That could be anywhere. Muslims claim it's the Kaaba there in Mecca. And he takes a large idol and he smashes all the smaller idols. Now, where does that story come from? Did Abraham actually do that? Do you see a story of him going into a Masjid al-Haram and smashing idols? And then when he comes out the next day, they grab him and put him into a fiery pit? Is that in your Bible? No, that's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right?
Right.
You can see they've confused the two stories. No, it's not confused. That comes from the Mishnah of Rabbah, written in the 2nd century. We know exactly where the source for that story is. It's a Jewish apocryphal account. So when these Arabs needed to put together the Quran, they had to go with what they had. And a lot of what they had were only these apocryphal accounts, these Jewish apocryphal accounts. But they had something even better. They also had the Christian Syriac writings. Christian Syriac writings. Written in Syriac. Why? Because that was the language of theology there in the 7th century. All in every one of the large cities, in Damascus and in Petra and in Ctesiphon, every one of these large cities, you had a bishop. And the bishops had their bishoprics. And the bishops only spoke in Syriac. Though the people out in the streets spoke Arabic, Syriac was the religious, the theological language, much like you have the Catholic Church today. They only speak in Latin. Back then it was Syriac. Now, the Arabs did not speak Syriac, and so they were not part of all these discussions, these religious discussions. The Arabs, who were the ones who were the indigenous people of that area, they didn't even have a script to write. There was no written script in Arabic at that time. So what had to happen when Abdul Malik came to power? Well, he was an Arab speaker. He wanted to bring Arabic as the language of the empire. But he didn't have anything to work with. So therefore, he took the Arabic script, which at that time only consisted of 16 letters. Today it has 28 letters, but back then it was only 16. Had no dots above and below the line, and had no vowels, much like Hebrew. Very crude. And so he had to borrow these different stories. And so those of, not he himself, it was those of the scholars underneath him, they had to go and borrow whatever they could. So what they did is they borrowed many Syriac writings. But the Syriac is very similar to Arabic in that it's also consonantal, like Arabic is. It also has dots and vowels, which Arabic didn't have at that time. So they borrowed these Syriac writings, took all the dots off and the vowels off the Syriac, and then introduced them into what is today these Quranic manuscripts, which I have here. I have 3 of them. You look at them, they're only consonantal. But they're Syriac consonants. So what is it when you look at it, you can't read it because one little shape like this, a little bold shape, which most of your letters are to begin with, if you put 1 dot above that bold shape, it makes it an N. If you put 2 dots, it makes it a T. If you put 3 dots above it, it makes it a TH. There go the balloons again.
We're celebrating again.
We're celebrating all over again. It's all the celebration. My computer's listening to me and enjoying what they're hearing. If you put 1 dot below it, it becomes a B, and if you put 2 dots, it becomes a Y, a ya. Na, ta, tha, ba, ya. 5 different letters suddenly are formed. And that's how you begin to read it, by putting the dots where you want to. 5 different dots, creating 5 completely new letters. But that doesn't tell you how to pronounce it. You still need the vowels. So there are 3 vowels. A curlicue above the letter makes it a oo sound. A slash above the letter makes it a ah sound. A slash below the letter makes it a e. Ooh, ah, E. Now you have 3 vowels. Now you can write the Quran. But hold on. You've got all these consonantal Qurans with no dots and vowels. You start putting in, you say, well, okay, who's going to decide on what dots to put where and what vowels? So somebody over in Kufa decides, I'm going to write it my way. Then somebody over in Cairo says, I'm going to write it my way. And then another person in Damascus says, no, I'm going to put my dots and vowels here. Then another person way down in the south in Medina says, no, let's put my dots and vowels here. And then another person in Mecca puts their dots and vowels where they want to. Then you start to get a whole proliferation of many people putting their dots and vowels where they want to, coming up with totally different Qurans. By the 10th century, you had 700 Qurans. All written differently with dots and vowels where they wanted to. Nobody bothering to look at the other, and not one person opening up the page of another person to see if they paralleled each other. You've got a dilemma now, don't you, Jake?
Yeah, you got a patchwork quilt of theological nonsense at that point in time.
There you go. So a guy named Ibn Mujahid was commissioned to choose just 7 of these from these 700. So he chose the first 7, 3 from Kufa, 1 from Basra, 1 from Baghdad, 1 from Medina, and 1 from Mecca. 7 that you get right there, right? But they're from 5 different cities. No 2 are alike. No 2 did he ever look at. He didn't look at any page. He didn't open up one letter or one word or read one thing. Guess how he chose his 7? How would you guess? If he didn't do any textual analysis, then what did he do to choose them?
I would say probably population. The more popular they are, that's the one I'd pick.
Bingo. You look to see who had the most students. And whoever had the most students, he was chosen. So that was 7 that were chosen in the 10th century, right? 920, 936. But this one wasn't amongst them. This is the one that's used all over the world today. This is the Hafs Asim. This one here. You see that in that list of 7? No. So there was another dilemma. By the 12th century, there was many others that were much more popular than those 7. And so a guy named Al-Shatibi was then commissioned in 1192, just before he died. He died in 1192. He was commissioned to choose 2 students from every one of those 7. Now, some of those guys had 91 students, like Anasim had 91 students. And so he had to choose 2 of them. He threw out 89 and retained Schwab and this guy, Hafs. Both of them from Kufa, because Anasim was from Kufa, which is Baghdad today, just south of Baghdad. Can you see? So from each 2 from each of the 7, now you have 14. 14 added to the 7, now you have 21 Qurans, right? That still wasn't good enough, because then in the 15th century, you have another guy named Al-Jazari, considered to be the leading authority on these are called qira'ats, by the way. These are called readings. Who decided to add another 3 qira'ats and another 6 riwayats. That means students. All of them chosen by popularity. Whoever had the most students, they were chosen. So now you have 7 plus 14 plus 3 plus 6. You now have 30 different Qurans. 30 different Qurans by the 15th century, 800 years after Muhammad. You have a dilemma on your hands, because no 2 of them are alike. We've done a study. In fact, Dr. Shadi Nasser, who is the world's leading authority on the qira'ats today in the 21st century, he is a professor at Harvard University. He has now looked, and he has found over 90,000, 93,000. He says it's going to be even more than that. It's possibly going to go over 100,000 differences between this one here and the other 29.
That's amazing.
What do you hear Muslims say? There's not one word, not one letter changed, and yet we found 93,000 differences. Can you see why no one's listening to them anymore? We've just shut that one down. Now, when I say we, it was not us that shut it down. It was a lady named Hatun Tash. Hatun Tash is a colleague of mine. She's from Turkey. She is the one was born in a strong Muslim family. Her father was a well-known imam in Turkey, and she left in around 2000. I can't remember the exact year she had to leave Turkey, but I met her in 2012, 2013. About that time period, she was my student at Oxford, at the Oxford Center for Christian Apologetics, and I was at that time that she wanted to. She then came down to Speaker's Corner, because that's where I was every Sunday, and joined our team. Loved Speaker's Corner and never has stopped going until just now. We don't know where she is at the moment. So she was the one that was in North Africa. I think it was in 2013, teaching, and wanted to get an Arabic Quran. Went into a shop there and asked the guy behind the counter, could he give me an Arabic Quran? And the guy said, well, which one? She said, what do you mean, which one? Well, she says, well, over here we have Schwab, we have Hafs, we have Warshir, we have El-Kasai. And he started naming about 5 or 6 of these different Qurans. So she said, well, give me them all. So he gave them to her, and she brought them back to London. I looked at them and started laughing, because I had no idea that these were still in existence. If you study Islam and the history of Islam, you will know about these qira'ats. They're well known in academia. And these are the readings, the different readings that I just mentioned to you, that I just explained to you. And there should be about 30 of them. And I said to you, and she asked, well, how many can I find? I said, you can find about 30 of them. And so she started sending people who were flying down to Yemen or going to Jordan or going down to Morocco. She said, if you do, can you get this one for me? Can you get this one? She's given a whole list of ones that they were to look for. And so by 2016, she had 26 of these Qurans. So we took them down to Speaker's Corner and held them up for the whole world to see. And that's what opened up the whole can of worms for Muslims. That was the first time they had ever seen different Qurans, no two are alike, in public, and also on the internet. Because then we filmed it and put it up on the internet, so they had to deal with it. And that's then what happened with Muhammad Hijab, who was right there looking at this, telling all the Muslims, come to me, I'll explain to you what they're saying and what they're showing. He never was able to explain it to him, because then he had to interview Dr. Yasad Qadi in 2020 about this question. And anyways, you know what the rest of the story is if you've been watching the video. So that's basically where Islam began. It began as a rejection of Christianity, a rejection of the divinity of Jesus, a rejection of the Trinity, and a rejection of his sonship. And then it became a political force that needed to not only have a theological base, but needed to be a political force against the Byzantines. So that's why the Dome of the Rock had to be built, as a polemic against both the Byzantine Christianity and also as a political gesture, saying, we now control your pilgrimage routes, both Jews and Christians. But once they'd done that, they then had to put together their own book, and then they had to put together their own prophet in order to have a prophet in the line of Ishmael. That's why Muhammad then got chosen, not as Jesus, because they had taken out Jesus' name out of all the texts and replaced it with Nabi, or Rasul. Then they made Muhammad that prophet. Once they had the book, once they had the man, they needed a place. And that's why Mecca was chosen. But that's why you can't find any reference to Mecca prior to the 7th century at all. And the first time we see it referred to is not till the 8th century. So now you have the book, the man, and the place. Here's the problem. Once you got the book of the man, and the place, then the Abbasids come along. They're the ones that defeat the Umayyads in 749. They are the ones that really created Islam as we know it.
You finally took the plunge and started that video blog, or podcast. And it looks great. So you go down the checklist. 1. You talk about lots of important stuff. 2. The set looks incredible. 3. You are already lining up amazing guests. 4. Wait, what's 4 again? Oh right, you need viewers. You know, people to actually watch the videos you're uploading. Those people that make it possible to monetize your podcast or video, or bring in customers. So, how do you get viewers? Well, you can hire some big ad agency, but to them, you are still just a small client. You can call every member of your family, and their families, or you can contact Elite Power Pros. We'll tailor a custom plan that meets your needs, finds your audience, and keeps your budget in mind during the whole process. Visit us today at ElitePowerPros.com. That's ElitePowerPros.com.
For years, I listened to the Baker Report. It was cutting edge, and his rants priceless. Now he's back and just as outspoken, and even more penetrating on the confluence of history, headlines, and prophecy. Check right here every Friday for the latest release of the Baker Report. Here's what some of his viewers had to say.
Wow, I'd forgotten how much I missed the Baker Report. Just hearing that voice made me happy.
Classic Baker Report. Fabulous. Just fabulous.
Jake gets it. It's headlines, history. It's about the unfolding of prophecy. The perfect way to end the week and start the Sabbath. Love it.
Join Dr. Jake Baker every Friday afternoon for the Baker Report. And don't forget to hit the like button. Then subscribe and tell a few hundred of your closest friends that the Baker Report is back every Friday afternoon on Rumble.
Dr. Daniel Taylor is a specialist with 40 years of experience in examining bodies. In almost 90% of cases, he reports finding terrible parasitic infestation. These deadly parasites often live in the lungs, heart, liver, even the brain. Their colonies inhabit internal organs, and the larvae feed on the tissues of living people. That's why Sanus One created our one-of-a-kind wellness and BioCleanse formula that attacks disease and parasites that can cripple your immune system and destroy your vital organs. And their toxic waste can paralyze or impede your entire system. Our Sanus One formulas are designed for preemptive wellness and can bring dramatic results even for post-parasitic infestation. Protect your health and feel good again with Sanus One, Wellness and True Health Formula. Visit us at sanus1.com, that's sanus1.com.
And we are back with page 3 of the Baker Report. We hope you enjoyed the second installment of our special report with Dr. J. Smith, bringing light to the darkness of Islam. Next week's, of course, we'll have the third of 4 installments on the fairy tale religion of Islam, built on lies, fake history, fear, and brutality. Meanwhile, back here, as we said on page 1, we're faced with a true existential crisis with somewhere around 10 million Islamists in this country. How many are radicalized? We don't know. But we do know this, that the number is substantial. And even those who are not radicalized will not speak out or turn in those who are. They hide in the shadows for fear of retribution. And the pockets of Islam in this country, in Dearborn, Michigan, who came here as a result of Henry Ford's vehement hatred of Jews and his recruiting of Islamists to the religion. But Dearborn, Michigan is just the tip of the iceberg. We have large pockets in New York, Miami, Chicago, Wisconsin, Minnesota, particularly in the Minneapolis area, Washington, Oregon, Los Angeles, California, and countless other places around the country. Our own government has reported on Islamist training centers in my state of Texas. Remember, too, that chaos is one of the signs of judgment on a nation. Interesting. Jonathan Edwards, you may recall him from his sermon, In the Hands of an Angry God, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. He gave us 4 signs that a society is about to dissolve into a collapse. One of those signs was societal chaos. When a country has many rulers or frequent changes in leadership, it's a sign of instability and disaster, as God has abandoned them due to their sins, widespread immorality, and a lack of the fear of God in a nation, and it destabilizes its very foundations. It angers God. Societies that fail to honor virtue or mourn the loss of righteous leaders are foolish and morally bankrupt. We can notice that the contrasting conditions of a community are often caused by the behavior of its members, specifically their wickedness or lack of righteousness, or their righteousness in conflict with the wickedness around them. The instability and constant change in the community's public affairs often stem from their wrongdoings. In other words, it's darkness versus light. But let me add a few. When a nation's fiat currency is in free fall and inflation is high, it immediately precedes an economic collapse, and they are usually engineered and part of a power grab. When nations start persecuting and prosecuting goodness and righteousness and praising sin, they are on the edge of collapse. Finally, when churches seek popularity instead of eternal truth, a society is well on its way out. So we look around and we see all those symptoms. Now, Donald Trump is doing well in the polls. He's soaring to new heights politically. He won 98 of 99 counties in Iowa. He destroyed the competition there, garnering, as I said, 98 of 99 counties, and took more than 50% of the total caucus votes. Nikki Haley managed to keep one county out of his win column with dirty tricks and cheating. She got a bunch of Democrats to switch parties and vote for her, skewing the totals. But that isn't going to help you in the general election. It is a low-life move, but that's how rhinos like Nikki Haley operate. But I caught a bit of all of this on CNN and a bit of it on Fox News on Tuesday, and I hate to have to watch those things, but I do it for you. It's a part of my job to watch so that you don't have to suffer through all that crap. But the entire conversation really wasn't about the Trump blowout of DeSantis and Nikki Haley. The conversation was all about the fight for second place, the second place finish, which was taken by Ron DeSantis. Can you imagine that? Donald Trump took an historic victory in Iowa, and they spent the evening discussing 2 losers that together didn't equal Trump's total. So, you know that this victory and the left and the rhinos are apoplectic, and they're going to do anything they can to double down and persecute or prosecute Donald Trump. And if that fails, they'll try to jail him. Now, here's the scary part. What if that doesn't work? Will they make him the next John F. Kennedy or Epstein, for that matter? They're desperate to keep him out of the White House. Just how far are they willing to go to make that happen? In previous weeks, we've talked about the fact that there will be violence this year. If Trump wins, the left is going to become ungovernable and burn down half of America. If they jail Trump, what are his supporters going to do? They're going to lose their minds. If they kill him, I believe there will be armed revolution. If he's elected and implements his plan to close the borders, kill the drug cartels like he destroyed ISIS, and begin mass deportations, the left will lose their collective empty minds, and they may move to civil war. So my admonition to all of you is prepare. Many people are telling us to prepare for the most likely scenario. I say prepare for the worst possible scenario. If you do, you'll also be prepared for whatever else comes that isn't that bad, but you'll be prepared. There are some who would tell us that it's faithless to prepare. But the Lord tells us to prepare for storms by building our house on the solid rock, not on shifting sands. He says, look to the ant, thou sluggard. In other words, be prepared for what's going to come, what's undoubtedly going to come, what must come. It's prophesied. He says, get ready in advance. Pray that your flight not be in the winter or on the Sabbath day, because that means you haven't prepared. You've been caught unawares. Keep quiet, say nothing, but in private. Store food, water, and necessary items. Arm your house. The Second Amendment is not just an obligation, not just a right, rather, it's an obligation. You need to be able to defend your family, your provisions, your neighborhood, your city, county, state, and country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Store items that are likely to be good barter items on the open market should it come to that. If the banks are shut down, if there is no economy, what do you have that you can trade to get what you need? Take a few days on a weekend and watch some preparedness videos. I know it sounds crazy, preparedness videos, but watch some escape and evasion videos for both backcountry and urban settings. Now, pray that you never need them, but at least know how to protect your family and get them out of harm's way. Now, by the way, put some of our Sanus1.com health and wellness formula in your bug out bag for every member of your family. Listen, water supplies, sanitation, they're all going to be sketchy. They're all going to be poor. Our immune system is going to be under attack. You need the protection of Sanus One Health and Wellness. It will keep you from becoming a victim of all of those things. Imagine just for a minute now. Imagine what our society would look like if there was a financial collapse. But it doesn't have to be that drastic. Let's talk about something as simple as a shutdown of the internet, which the powers that be have more than enough power to do. They don't even have to have a nuclear explosion to do it. They can just shut the internet down. Just that alone would end water, sanitation, food delivery. It would close hospitals. There would be no phones or internet service, no radio, no television. There would be a complete lack of law enforcement. Our military would at least be partially blinded. They wouldn't know what the Russians or the Chinese are doing. That creates problems. Transportation would come to a halt. There would be no trains, planes, or buses. There would be no government checks, no welfare, no social security, no banking, no services. What would your community look like if everything failed and we were back in 1840, 1860? I can promise you that 9 meals into that crisis, society would be breaking down. That's 3 short days without water and food and sanitation and power. And by then the food would be gone from the store shelves. What wasn't looted would have already been sold. Most cupboards would be empty because most people only have a 3-day supply of food. That's when empty shelves equal panic. That equals chaos. So my admonition to you is prepare. And finally, prepare spiritually. Listen, folks, we're victors. But that victory only goes to those who fight the good fight until the very end. Don't quit 5 minutes early. This is nothing more than a dress rehearsal for eternity, and the real production will begin a lot sooner than many people think. Be bold. This is not a time for timidity. And there is the most wonderful news of all, folks. As of this moment, the past just doesn't matter anymore. As of this moment, Yahweh is ready to make you a completely new person. That's what he promises. You are a new person in Yeshua Messiah. A new identity can be birthed in you. God can and will create in you a spiritual warrior. The warrior that you must be for these last days. He's only waiting for you to seek and ask. And with the act of faith, that simple act of faith, you will become a better, stronger person than you have ever been. A mighty warrior with a whole new way of living in strength and power. A warrior who is shaking the powers of hell and redeeming the time, as Ephesians 5 tells us, because the days are evil. Our prayer is that this election will go well and that America will have a slight reprieve. But I can tell you, beyond any shadow of a doubt, judgment is coming. Let us be counted among those who, as the scripture says, held to the commandments of Yahweh and the testimony of Yeshua, and they loved not their lives even unto death. Saints, this is that time of glorious battle. As George Patton said, compared to war, all other forms of human endeavor shrink to insignificance. God help me, I do love it so. While he was speaking of earthly warfare and the battle against nations, our battle is against the prince of the power of the air. The war that we are in is a spiritual war, and I can say without a doubt that truly all other human endeavors shrink in significance in the face of this final, glorious battle. We've been called to be soldiers of the cross. This is the greatest adventure in human history, and we, you and I, are privileged to be a part of this prophetic unfolding. Breathe it in. Cherish every moment of it. The prophets longed for this day, this hour, this moment. And here you are, not with a front row seat, but in the front lines. Appointed of Yahweh to this last great and final conflict. This is the sound and smell and feel of spiritual battle. And we are there shredding the demonic darkness of sin and piercing the darkness of hellish Islam with the light of the gospel of Yeshua, our Messiah. What a glorious time to live in the kingdom of Yahweh and fight as a knight of the realm. Watch the heavens with spiritual eyes, and you can almost glimpse the angelic conflagration as light and dark explode in the unfolding of eternity. It is, folks, magnificent. For the Baker Report, I'm Jake Baker. Until next time, good day, take care, Lord bless.